We're at James Madison's home, Montpelier.
Exploring his life and death as we navigate the rooms of this historic home. I feel like such a nerd, but I'm actually excited to be back here again. Corey and I were here years ago during the winter, but being here in the spring just has a completely different vibe to it. And I'm excited to go back inside and refresh my memory on this amazing house. Let's first clarify that Montpelier was funded by James Madison's father, but it was built by slaves.
This is the original portion of the house that was built in the 1760s.
You can tell right up above my head there's like a triangle shape there, and that indicates that there used to be a porch above the original structure of the home. When it was completed, this was the largest brick home in Orange County, Virginia. This doesn't really seem like that big of a house to me, but what do I know?
We'll talk about the additions to the house later on.
But first, let's go inside and see what the original portion of the house looked like. Most people probably think this hallway is plain, but I actually love it.
The South Passage was the entrance to the original house. A lot of the paintings here were later purchased by Dolley Madison's son, John Payne Todd, during his travels in Europe.
John Payne Todd had a bit of a spending problem, but we will get into that later.
In 1797, James and Dolly returned to Montpelier, where they lived with his parents. James Madison expanded the house, basically making it a duplex. After James Madison's father died, his mom hung out in this room.
Let's say it's minimalistic. I think that's a good word to describe it. I just can't get over the contrast of Nelly just chilling in her room, reading the Bible, and then Madison's in the next room just hanging out with like Thomas Jefferson and Lafayette in this super fancy room. Things started to get a little fancy once Madison inherited this home after his father passed away in 1801. Not only did Madison add one-story wings to each side of the house, but he also created this drawing room, which is where he hung out with all of his friends.
People like Thomas Jefferson and James Monroe would often hang out here.
My favorite thing about this whole room is Madison just has a whole wall of all of his friends and then puts him and his wife just in the corner. What a humble man.
Any random person could show up to meet Madison.
I can't imagine today being able to just roll up and visit a former president and like, if they're there, then they'll talk to you. That's just such a bizarre concept. So after Madison served in the Continental Congress, he was the Secretary of State and then the president. He and Dolly returned here when he retired at the age of 65.
However, he was not doing well financially. His plantation yielded low profits, and his stepson, John Payne Todd, racked up a lot of debt due to his gambling addiction.
I always assumed Madison was loaded given how big his house was. I had no idea that he was pretty destitute in his retirement. Madison had the bright idea to publish some of his notes from the Constitutional Convention as well as some other papers in order to make some money.
In this room, Madison organized his papers for publication. This used to be a library, but it eventually became Madison's bedroom.
There's so much happening in this space. I mean, James Madison would sleep here, he would organize his papers, and the fact that the chamber pot was there is really humbling for some reason. Just picturing James Madison using a chamber pot, but I digress.
A big topic on Madison's mind during his retirement was slavery. Here in the dining room, we get a sense of what dinner may have looked like with the Madisons.
So here, of course, we have Dolly at the head of the table with James in the middle, and then in the back corner is his slave, Paul Jennings. And I think it's very apt that James Madison liked to sit in the middle of the table instead of the head, because he seems like he was a very kind of shy guy and he wanted to not be the center of attention. Paul Jennings was one of the hundreds of slaves owned by James Madison.
Madison was conflicted over slavery. He felt it was morally wrong, yet he never freed his slaves, not even in his will.
He would undoubtedly debate the subject of slavery with a dinner guest, Lafayette, who was an abolitionist, when Lafayette came to visit here around the 1820s. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall during Madison's dinner parties. Just to hear him and Lafayette go at it about slavery would have been extremely fascinating. And Paul Jennings is there in the back the whole time listening to it.
Yeah, imagine what he's thinking as a slave while they're holding these conversations.
We're about to go into the room where James Madison began writing the U.S. Constitution. That in itself is just mind-blowing to me. Originally used by his father, this room became the spot where James Madison formulated the groundwork for the U.S. Constitution.
This was my favorite room. I was just imagining Madison sitting there at his desk, building the Constitution, and he has this beautiful view of the Blue Ridge Mountains. He must have felt inspired by the beauty of America while writing that document.
I sure would have.
At the end of his life, Madison had bad arthritis and was confined to his bed. It was in this room where Madison passed away at the age of 85.
His slave, Paul Jennings, was at his side when he passed away. I really want to know more about the relationship between Paul Jennings and James Madison, because I mean, he was right there when he passed away, and James Madison still did not free him in his will.
He was born here at Montpelier with the Madison family his entire life, and Madison couldn't free him?
Come on, man. What are you doing? Let's see where James and Dolley Madison are buried. Oh my god, we almost became inhabitants of this cemetery before we realized there's a huge swarm of bees.
If we don't bother them, they won't bother us.
Exactly.
It's that simple. The day after he died, a small gathering of slaves, family, and friends witnessed his burial here. Just a random thought, do you think Mr. Madison was compensating for his very small stature?
Just for perspective, I am 1 inch taller than what James Madison was.
You know, I was thinking maybe Dolley's gravestone could be a little bigger. It's very small compared to James, and I feel like she was kind of running the show at the house, just saying.
But I'm thinking that's because she was basically poor when she died, and maybe this was the best they could do.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
I'm so glad we came back. I mean, it's been 10 years since we've been here before, but I totally forgot all about the fact that this home was a duplex, so it's really amazing to come back with that fresh perspective.
I think once James Madison inherited it, it became more presidential.
Definitely, especially with the columns out front, because apparently Thomas Jefferson told him to do that, which is a very Thomas Jefferson addition to a home.
Jefferson loved his columns.
He sure did. What did you think was the most interesting part about this house or James Madison's life? Definitely comment below and let us know. And as always, thanks for watching.
Bye.
We have Molly at the head of
Here's a weird one.
Dinner guest, Luffy Demar. Oh.